clearly government is important, and tons of very important roles in government. But the point of that story is that business is and can be a tremendous driver of real change on the planet, just given the financial, the human, the innovation capabilities and capital at their disposal. And I think, my experience, I've been at Coke now for 10 years, and I think, big companies certainly, great companies, obviously have to exist in the short term, right? So we have to make a profit. We have to show that Wall Street that we're able to deliver results. But if we don't look after the long term, we won't have a business. And balancing those two is probably the single most important job for the leadership of any company. We've been around 127 years. That's a long time. And so looking forward, similarly, real focus on the long term. And so I think this notion of sort of talking about the private sector as if it is only about narrow private interests is a little bit of a misnomer. And why do I want to hear people talk about the private sector versus the public sector? Because a lot of what business does is very public, and it's very much engaged in public good, properly understood. So, I really do think that that's a part of it. And we've seen a lot of the recent language around shared value, Michael Porter, talking about companies that really do understand how to build their own markets in the long term by creating shared value through their business models, not philanthropy, not companies doing things that are not within a core capability, but really using what they have, what skill sets they have, what core assets they have, and making sure that we're leveraging those in ways that can bring shared value to others, to sort of, in a sense, reconnect capitalism. And I think that's one of the big challenges in the 21st century, is to demonstrate that this market model can work. And I think it's still an open question in the minds of many, and therefore very important for people who do believe that this is the best of all possible models, not perfect, but certainly one capable of delivering great level of benefit, that it will continue to do so by evolving, right, and showing that we can become more connected in this sort of connected capitalism way. I didn't have a plan. I didn't have a plan to get where I got, but I just followed my interest. Right? I mean, I really did. And when I was young, I think you can absolutely do that because you don't have as many responsibilities perhaps as you might later. But I did what I thought was important, what I wanted to do, and because I was lucky to persevere and hang in there long enough to get jobs that motivated me. I did reasonably well at them because I was passionate, and that passion showed. And then that gave an opportunity for maybe another step, etc. And so I think it's trite, but I think it's absolutely true, and that is really follow your passion. Don't compromise. Really focus on where you think you want to do it. Persistence phase. One of the lessons that I think I've learned also in my career, I mentioned earlier AID, it was really a huge education at AID for me, because AID is a highly decentralized organization. The real power of AID is the missions, right, as it should be. That's the lesson learned over years of hard development experience. And so the mission directors in the aid world are really the key players. They're the functional folks in Washington that do thematic things like agriculture. I was accountable for energy, environmental technologies, renewable energy emissions. Very important, but the real power is out in the field. And so if you want to get things done, you have to manage by influence. You have to find out how to bring a shared agenda together. And it's not my agenda. It's your agenda, my agenda, and how we meet in the middle to find a common solution. That is absolutely the same skill you need in a business organization, because even though they may be vertically integrated and out in the business community, if you don't do your job, you're going to get fired. That's not true. It doesn't work like that. You have to manage by influence in business as well. You have to form relationships. You have to understand the perspective of other stakeholders and really find a way to integrate those. In business, it's if the issues aren't embedded in business processes, I know that sounds like a hard, flat phrase, but it's very important. It doesn't get done. So accountability to the HR system in terms of rewards and incentives, accountability through KPI, key performance indicator reporting that goes up the chain of command, and making sure sustainability is included in that. But the one thing that is really at the heart of it is in sort of strategic business planning. And so what we've begun to roll out, we now have about 10 of our business units, I think piloted in 2, is what we're calling the value creation model. So it's basically a kind of a shared value scorecard, if you will, a business tool that looks at the areas of impact that we believe are important for us in the world. So personal health and well-being, and there are a lot of issues around the health impacts of sugar in our drinks, et cetera. So how are we measuring and understanding that? So well-being, our social impact, whether it's empowering women or respecting human rights and workplace rights and a whole host of other things, or what we're doing on the environment. So those sort of 3 buckets of me, we, and the world, shorthand it. And really understanding what are the values and the impacts of those areas. On the sort of business side are 3 areas of value that are of value to business. The financial and operational. So is this initiative driving top line growth or cutting bottom line, cutting savings, making savings in terms of resource productivity? So I kind of shorthand that as revenue, right? So it's financial. The second and very important one is risk, is what we're doing mitigating a risk, a regulatory risk, a resource risk, a social license to operate risk. Risks are a big part of managing business. There's risk in everything we do. And a lot of what we do in the sustainability space can help address some of this. So when we do good things on water to empower better watershed management in our community, that has an impact. It's not just good for the community, which shows up on this side of the ledger, but it's also reducing the risk that there would be loss of continuity of operations for us. We can articulate. And then the third bucket, it's sort of revenue risk. The third bucket is reputation. And certainly for us, as a company with 400 brands, one of which is the world's most recognized, reputation and trust are really vital. And so how do you begin to measure the degree to which these things are driving sort of goodwill and reputational value and brand value for that matter. So we're trying to assess those, and then you can then map individual initiatives or efforts and saying what on an XY axis, what's the social impact, what's the business impact, where you get high social impact and high business impact. You probably want to be doing that more. If you're not getting a whole lot of either, you're in the bottom half quadrant, you probably want to be considered investment. So that's what we're doing. We're trying to vet. Well, I suppose communication, being a good communicator is critically important. So you can have the best ideas, but if you can't, and that's a little bit of a negotiation piece, but if you can't articulate or translate from one value set to another, it makes it very difficult to make the transition. And that's probably the most profound point in all of this. So, when I came into Coca-Cola, I spent several months really kind of listening to the way people talk about business, and found ways to re-articulate my own vision of what I thought was important for the company to be doing in the language of how the business talked, right? So at the time, risk was a big thing. We were going through a bunch of risks in India. We had a big black eye from allegations of groundwater withdrawal at the expense of poor people in Kerala, et cetera. So risks, and finding ways to not change your message. It's just to frame it in the language that a business would be receptive to, as opposed to sort of putting your vocabulary as a development professional and saying, no, this is the way you have to understand it. Monitoring and evaluation is a great development term. KPIs and impacts or something. It's really just a question of sort of nuance and sensitivity. But I think that's important because people who don't fit into the culture, into the corporate culture, and every organization has a culture. AIB has a culture. Coca-Cola has a culture very different than Texaco's culture. Texaco's culture is very different than Chevron's culture, which acquired it. And organizational effectiveness is a large element of organizational effectiveness is engage in an appropriate way with that corporate culture and sort of move with it to help make things happen. Well, let me just finish by thanking all of you, because I think that the studies that you're all undertaking and the work that I know you're all going to be doing in so many different ways is really going to change the world. It's really exciting. And I can kind of feel the passion, the energy